today is November 19th, 2007. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with the Oklahoma State University Library, and we're conducting an oral history project called Women of the Oklahoma Legislature. And today I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma at the OSU campus to talk with Judy Eason McIntyre, who was in the House from 2002 to 2004, and then switched to the Senate. Yes. 2004 to the present. So thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Let's start by having you tell us a little bit about your childhood, and then we'll work forward.
Well, I'll start out by saying I had a wonderful childhood. I did not really realize that until I got older. I'm one of four. I'm the oldest of four, 3 girls, 1 boy. My father is from Oklahoma City, my mother from Sapulpa. They met at Langston. And my mother doesn't like for me to tell this story, but anyway, I was conceived somewhere on Langston's campus, and my mother dropped out of school her junior year. It was during the Second World War, right after Pearl Harbor, my father was then inducted into the Army and did not have to fight. But because of his education, taught basic English, math to black soldiers who was in the Army then. And he went to France, worked for the general, came back and finished at Kansas State University. I started elementary school here in Tulsa at Ralph J. Bunch Elementary School in 1950. My dad worked and did not want my mom to work, wanted her to be involved in the school, so she was the PTA president, the chaperone, etc. I graduated, attended Tulsa Public Schools, graduated from Booker T. Washington High School in 1963. At the end of I think it was August, I was also involved in the church, of course, and my minister was trying to, quote, fill the bus to go to the March on Washington. I had never been past Oklahoma City, so I begged my parents to let me go. They did. I never understood initially why they were concerned. And having grown up in a segregated Tulsa, I had very little opportunity to interact with white children. I was on the inner city student council, the inner city orchestra, but we only met a couple of times a year. When we had football games or athletic events, the white students sit on one side, we sit on the other, we never mixed. So when I got to Washington and I saw all of these people, I was just taken back. Now, could I tell you what the purpose of being there was? No. I can remember Martin Luther King talking about, I have a dream, and he kept repeating it, but I'm just so in awe about, all of these different people. I remember saying, wonder why he keeps repeating himself. It wasn't until I started school at OU that I began to realize what the movement was all about, because in 1963, unfortunately, the University of Oklahoma had a long way to go, and most of the girls in the dorm, once their parents discovered that I was black, wanted me to move out. Yeah, and and I almost forgot my name because I was called the N-word. Yes, in the classroom, in the dorm, and the girls would talk with me, and we, like most girls, that you interact with in the dorm. And as long as we were in the dorm, I was their friend. When we got out on campus, I guess the norm is that you don't have a black friend. So I made a huge transition from an age of innocence because my parents sheltered me. I never realized that when we went downtown and we had to stay in the car, and if we acted, quote, good, we could get an ice cream cone. It's because My mom couldn't try on clothes. We couldn't use the bathroom. On and on and on. But I never realized, that people didn't like you just because of the color of your skin till I got there. And then during the 60s, remember, was the beginning of a national kind of civil rights movement. So I went from the age of innocence to anger and rage, and I became involved in everything that I could. But at the same time, my parents had told us all that we were going to college. When the ice cream man came and we said, "Daddy, we want some ice cream," he says, "You can get a job and pay for your own because you're going to college." And when I entered OU, my father by then was working 2 jobs at the post office and cleaning up at Hillcrest Hospital, because eventually there were 3 of us at OU and my dad was the only one paying, no loans, nothing. And, I chuckle now as I talk to folks because we all understood what we had to do. You had 4 years to finish. He was not going to pay for you to repeat a course. If you fell in love and wanted to get married, then you could do it, but your husband would pay, because he said he had worked 2 jobs and Eason was going to be on those diplomas. And I think back now, and we did. All 4 of us eventually graduated. And he died at 46 when the youngest was finishing Boston University. Oh, let me back up a minute. He said we could go to school anywhere in the state of Oklahoma. The youngest one started out at Phillips. She was the only one that did not go to OU initially. And after she met someone who lived in Boston and spent part of the summer there and just fell in love with the East Coast and decided she was going to leave Oklahoma and go there. And Daddy made a believer out of her because she had to work cleaning up. She was a waitress. And my mother, who was not working, sneaked the household money to her for little things. And but the bottom line is, I know he's looking down from the heavens, because we all then went on to get postgraduate degrees. I was determined at undergraduate that in addition to all of the social things that were going on, I was going to get on the honor roll at OU. And I did. It took me to my senior year. But I finished in social work in 1967, 4 years, like my dad said. I went on in 79 to get my master's in social work from the University of Oklahoma. My sister got her PhD in organizational psychology in California. My brother finished with the FBI under Hoover. He wanted to be postal inspector. But in the early 60s, they needed young undercover agents for drugs in D.C. And he made some kind of decision. Anyway, he ended up getting his master's in criminology from the University of of Maryland. And then my baby sister, who defied our parents, went on and got her MBA from Harvard. Yes, so education was stressed. We knew from the very beginning we were going to go to school. Didn't really realize early on what college and what it meant. I thought everybody's parents met in college and that everybody was going to college, And my mother was an avid reader. She read to us all the time. We certainly got the little dolls and cook things, but I can remember always fussing because I can remember younger, the How and Why books. That goes back a long way. Great books of the Western world, and everybody, other people are getting dolls and stuff, and we're getting this. Could not get a TV until I was in high school. My mother belonged to Reader's Digest Club, and so she read to us all the time. And all 4 of us have a love for reading. Uh, I did, in retrospect, have a wonderful childhood. Did not realize it because I didn't think that I was, the other kids were getting a whole bunch of different focus and things, and ours were academic. But in the end, it was, it was the best thing that happened. Also, the love, and that the segregated community gave me, which enabled you to grow within the church and other kinds of institutions that you would ordinarily get in a larger society, prepared me. It took a while to understand what was going on at OU. It took a while once I got infected with the fight of anger. I, soon as my parents told me, started doing the very same thing that I was accusing others of doing, is painting a broad brush against all whites because some were not being very kind to me for no reason. I mean, I know people may not like them, but give me a chance. And that chance wasn't given. But I think a combination of certainly my parents and their focus and determination that you're going to finish school. I used to call home and tell Daddy, I don't want to stay here. These people are mean. I do not want to be here. And he let me call for about a month or two, collect it. After that, he said, write me your concerns. And then I was not going anywhere. And so I did, as I told you earlier, had to, regardless of how much I wanted to get involved in this, the issues, social issues, my primary purpose for being there was to get an education, as my dad said. You can get involved in anything else you want to do. So I soon learned how to tread that, and I am so glad that in the end, that I persevered. It took me, however, graduation from undergraduate school, getting a job in 1967 with DHS, and actually asking, and as I think back now, they should have fired me on the spot. I said, I will not work with any white families. And guess what? They gave me all black families. 1967. And that probably lasted a couple of years. I refused to eat or socialize with any of the workers in there. I isolated myself because the hurt, I think, from not understanding how could we be friends. We laid out in the sun. I put Noxema on them, which I never understood why they want to get that red. Of course, I had long sleeves on when I was laying out there. And I could never understand, well, how could we be friends in one place and then the other? And so, but because of my parents who kept telling me, you're doing the same thing. And now I can understand the statement that Martin Luther King said. It took me a while and I began to understand. You don't judge people by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And so it was a slow process back from anger and rage, because you got to remember during this time there were killings and all kinds of things going on. And then when Martin Luther King was killed, and then the more militant crowd came in, of course I jumped on that bandwagon. I was part of the Tulsa Black Panthers here. We had no agenda, just a lot of rage. We met, and I think the thing that turned me around, well, in fact, I know it, because my parents were very concerned, and they kept telling me, you cannot fight from the outside, fight from the inside. And I'm standing on the outside talking about what we're going to do when we could have been annihilated within a second. But to show you what lack of agenda that we had was earlier on, the prostitutes used to stand on the corner of Greenwood and Archer. So we were going to go down, or we did go down, to, quote, protect the prostitutes from harassment of the police. This was the first time they introduced guns. And when the police came, the guys handed the guns to the girls. And I looked down and I saw this gun, which I've always been afraid of guns, even though my uncle shot rabbits and quails, I think it was. And I kind of looked around and I thought, you know what? I don't see anybody in here that's finished college, And suddenly it made sense to me. When the police left, and they didn't even come over to any of us, the women who had the guns. And when they left, I gave them the gun back, and it was like, adios. I understand now. And I came and I told my parents what had happened, and they were like, I don't believe it. But I've been on that path of rebuilding. And I can say at 62, I am there. I got there much earlier, though. It was a long trail back because times were just so turbulent. Then you had the Vietnam War, and people accuse me of being a protester. Well, I think I am. I'm a warrior, woman warrior, and I have fought, for causes. Any cause that came up, whether it was housing for the poor or those who were families of the incarcerated, whatever. I'm known as a bleeding heart. But I think a lot of that giving back came from a wonderful childhood that I had.
Sounds like. And when do you remember when you had your first family then, and a white family at DHS then?
Oh yes, it probably lasted. I might have worked about a year or two. Yeah, sure did. And I don't know. By that time, I had kind of began because I had one friend who was just determined. Meredith Anq is her name, and she was just determined to just brush off, my insistence that I'm not going to have anything to do with you. And as I look back now, it was the fear of being hurt. Because I didn't understand, these girls in the dorm we were just like sisters. And then when I see you on campus and I say, hi, Tanya, you don't even know me. So I was afraid of losing again as I look back. And so it was easier to build this barrier so I wouldn't get hurt. But you can't go anywhere in life without getting along with people.
Well, during high school, were you interested in politics or the political arena or government or anything?
Not really. I listened because there was so much reading going on in our home to the events, national events that were going on in between the school dances and everything else. Actually, my interest in politics probably started when I got to OU to kind of understand that level of it. But real interest in politics came when I met this guy and I married him in 1971, I think it was, after my father died in 1970 at the age of 46. And my ex-husband was interested in politics. And my minister who took me to Washington, D.C. was a state house member. And so my ex-husband, I was dating him then, and he was interested in politics. So my minister said, if you're interested, I'll take your hand. And there's a lot of learning, a lot of discipline that goes on here. It's not fun and game. But anyway, so my ex-husband became the ears and eyes, and we didn't have any children, so we got to spend almost every day when we weren't working with my minister / state representative. And he died. And my ex-husband at the age of 26, I think, 26, 27, won the House seat. We stayed married for 11 years. And we got a divorce, I think around 1980, and he went on to the Senate. and served there for 15 years. But unfortunately, lost his way and ended up, as I like to say, Oklahoma's Marion Barry. Lost everything. The drugs just destroyed it. I had been divorced 6 years when that happened, but I was still carrying the McIntyre name because in 1981, a year after our divorce, I was approached by him, because I think he thought I was going to run against him, and some others in the community to run for the school board. And during that time, we didn't have districts, designated districts, so you had to run citywide. People knew Judy McIntyre because of him. He hadn't gotten in any kind of trouble then. And so that's when I combined my name, Judy Eason McIntyre, and I ran citywide and won. So once I got a divorce, it was 11 years of being involved as a legislative wife. At that time, we didn't have the privilege of having an African American council member, the different kinds of different elected positions where black people held them. So we became the resource for federal, state, and local kind of issues. It was a great combination until I think probably about 7 years into it. And I could begin to see a change in him. He was in the legislature, and I'm not going to blame it on anything because in the end you have to take personal responsibility. There were no ethics. It was the wild, wild west, and I just only began to go into some of the things. And as a young man, he was very impressed by that. And some of these politicians are, even at 80, facing some of the, they say, their roosters have come back. And these were his idols. And he got caught up into that and destroyed his life. But I had been divorced 6 years when that happened, but I was still carrying the name because my friends at the Tribune in the World had said, keep that name. So in the process of being married to a legislator for 11 years and not having any children, I actually was working 2 jobs, social worker with child abuse and neglect. And in 1979, I became a supervisor, 24-hour call. And still, while he was there, we didn't have just 90 days like we have now. And so I wrote speeches, I gave speeches, because of my social work involvement. And the district that you represent, I was a resource. So, I basically did everything but vote. Take a vote on the House floor. So it gave me an opportunity to discover something that I loved because it fit right into what my parents had said. Work on the inside. So I was devastated when he no longer wanted to be married. But of course, you can't keep anybody, in a marriage that doesn't want to be there. So I had been so involved in, quote, Democrat politics, what's politics of the state and district, that's why I think he was afraid that I was going to run against him when we got a divorce. And he was one of the persons coming to me asking me to run for the school board. Of course, I said no just because he asked me. And but the superintendent and my mother and some other friends came and asked me, and I thought, well, you know what? I've been so involved to just sit down and do nothing. And plus, the kids that we work with that are in DHS custody are dependent on the foster parent and the social workers to help them. They've got lots of problems. Not that other kids who are not in our in DHS custody didn't, but this was another way of helping. And so for that reason, I decided, I'm going to run for that because I can no longer be involved in Democrat politics. You know, when there's a new Mrs. on the, you're sitting in the audience watching. But now, I'll tell you what, it wasn't a smooth transition. I went to therapy because I wanted to find out, you know, what was within me that I selected this person. Now let me back up. I dated this when I was at OU from 63 to 67. I dated a basketball player named Howard Johnson for 3.5 years, almost the whole time. And of course, as I had said earlier, I couldn't get married because he wasn't going to pay for me to go to college. So in 67, when we graduated, came home and asked Daddy if we could get married, and he didn't want me to. He said, go get your master's. But I told him I was in love, and that I had done what he asked me to do. And that was, get a degree. So he said, he shook hands with both of us and he said, good luck, even though he did not want me to. Had an elaborate wedding. I mean, and back then, this was 67 when I got married. Got my dress at Miss Jackson's. I mean, I was queen of the ball. Stayed married 8 months. I called my daddy. Called my daddy one evening. I said, I'm getting a divorce. Well, he used an expletive deleted word that begins with an H. I have not finished paying for the wedding. I said, Daddy, I'm on my way home. So I came home. And as my therapist told me, I went from one nest to the other. First my dad's, then my brief 8 months with my first husband. And then I managed, then the next nest was my ex-husband, Bernard McIntyre. And, just went from one nest to the other. And never had experience living on my own and living out of the shadow of somebody else. And so anyway, I stayed married 11 years to Bernard and loved it. If I got anything out of that marriage, was a real love for politics. I loved it. I fell in love with it almost immediately. In fact, I met him through a friend who said I had come home from my first divorce. And she said, I got a friend that's running for Democrat County Chair. Help him get elected. You're not doing anything. So I like to tell the story that he lost the race, but he won my heart. And so we hop into this nest. And I mean, he loved politics. As I look back now, he loved politics more than he loved anything. And that was what's so tragic about having lost his way on this process. But anyway, I loved it because I saw a way of being able to have an even stronger voice on some of the issues and hopefully making things happen. Just like with the school board. Kept a lot of kids out from long suspensions that were in DHS custody who were already struggling, who are already out there by themselves. That's where the bleeding heart came in. And so, it was like, whoa, hey, yeah, this is going to work. And I stayed on the school board for about 16 years. And when I think the second year I was selected president. And I look back, not because of anything that I had done, but it was part of a grand scheme. They were going to close 11 schools, most of them in the district, in the north side, even though I didn't have any districts at that time. And of course, as president of the board, I'm going to follow the recommendation. I had to have police protection for a month, and I was divorced by this time. because someone threatened to burn my house down. There was a group of people who brought the media to my house, and they stood out there protesting. I'm on the telephone talking to the superintendent who lives south, and he said, "Oh, it's going to be okay." Yeah, right. They're not in front of your house. But I made a decision after that that I would always do my own homework. Always do my own homework. And as I review that, and I tell people in the community now, I would do it again. You had less than 100 kids going to this school. Those schools, nothing was happening in there. Now, there should have been some corrective issues prior to that, efforts prior to that. But I also made a determination that I am not going to leave Tulsa. This is my home, and I'm going to stay here. But I got to rebuild the trust. And so that's when I began to move into doing my homework and not being afraid to ask the hard questions, to take a different stand, to mobilize the people to try to get some things done. And I fought my way back to my community. And when I got ready to retire from leave the school board, my community didn't want me to. But 16 years was enough. I had done all that I needed, and it was time for somebody else to come in and do some things differently. Well, I retired first from DHS after 31 years. The last 3 years I supervised the Tulsa staff, except for intake. And so, let's see, that was about 96 I retired from DHS, and maybe 97 or 98 I left the school board. And for the first year, I did nothing. But I got bored because I was so used to being involved in different entities. Because along the way, I've been on almost every board. There's just so many I can't even say. I wanted to initially volunteer at the school system, but I knew, having been such a fighter and providing oversight, that it would probably create more problems than it was worth, And the irony is that the senator and the House member who took my ex-husband's seat came to me and asked me to run. And I think we had about 6 different meetings, and I said no, because I remembered the 11 years. And as I told them, when he had to step down, that's when everybody thought I was going to take his position. And it was like, oh no, I don't want to go over there. That's a madhouse. Nothing. I wanted nothing to do with it. So it was really, again, my mother who said, you're just so active. You want to try to change the world, because I'm just a child of the 60s. This is a great opportunity. But I think she had a personal agenda, because she always said, well, you were the one who had done the work, most of the work anyway. You deserve that position. And as it turned out, I ran for the House in 2002, and there were 5 or 6 people running. Everybody thought I was going to have runoff. I'm sorry. But I got 60% of the vote. But I worked hard. But between 16 years on the school board, 31 years of working in families within not only this district, but throughout the city, throughout the state. And having worked myself back to the trust of the people in my community, they knew that I would fight, that I'm going to do my homework. I'm not just going to get up there trying to be a bully and a militant and just talking and getting nothing done. So I ran for that. I think I've gotten sidetracked now. I was talking so much, but anyway, make a long story short, I I learned so very much from the 11 years. I learned so much from the school board that when I ran for the House, it was just a breeze. Now, I worked extremely hard. In fact, I worked so hard and had volunteers calling that we had called about 4 or 5 times to all of the precincts that people were saying, Judy, if you call here one more time, you're going to lose a vote. And so the primary was the place where I won because the makeup, the demographics in terms of Republicans and Democrats, it was, you still had to do some things for the general, but nothing. And along the way, the same former senator and representative had brought a young man to me, Jabbar Shoemate, who was interested in running for the House. When I met with them and agreed to run, Don Ross said he was not going to serve his last 2 terms and that Maxine Horner was going to a term limit out. So that I would run. Now, I'm going to run for the House. But when I ran for the House, I told them I was running, this was just a stepping stone to run for the Senate.
Okay.
And when I look back now, I'm horrified because that is not what you do. And yet, when I ran for the Senate, I got 87% of the vote. 87% of the vote. Now, in the meantime, the former senator and former House member supported somebody else that I beat.
After asking you.
After asking. That's the irony of it all. And the young man that they introduced to me when I was in the House, he worked as a press secretary for David Bourne. And President Bourne knew that he was interested in kind of work with him. And so this young man, like my ex-husband and I, but my ex-husband more so than me, spent almost every day when they were in session. I was in session. He was over there with me. So he could see the process in addition to reading about it, could meet the people that he needed to know. The lobbyists, the leadership, and all of that, and worked in my campaign. And on Saturdays, he would bring a truckload of it, and I used to call them the UN because they were students from Chile and everywhere, and they would get to Tulsa on Saturday about 9 o'clock. Now, these are college folks who on Friday nights, no telling what was going on. And they would walk in the sun with me in the heat on Saturdays until about 2 or 3 o'clock. Of course, we fed them. They got right back on that and went back to Norman. Because I had made this young man youth coordinator. And I said, if you're interested, then you're going to learn to work. And so after I served those 2 years, of course, he filed and he won. And then I won mine. So to me, the cycle of life, it's moving. I am now, it's almost made a complete circle because now I see my role as my ex-minister, who was also / the state representative, because at 62, I believe that my role is to provide information about the history and to help prevent a lot of the mistakes I made along the way. And at the same time, gather information about the future. And to become that baton for the next generation, because that's where I believe that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Now, last year became even stronger. That was what I'm supposed to do. Last year, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was blessed. I had a double mastectomy. I was blessed in that it had not gone to the lymph nodes. I didn't have to have chemo or radiation. I did have a double mastectomy. And I figured God left me here for a purpose, not only to be able to testify about the goodness of the good Lord that I put my total faith in after the first 2 weeks, because I had planned my funeral the first 2 weeks, till my best friend reminded me I had survived my ex-husband, and I was like, oh yes, I gotta live, Lord. That's a true story. Then I put my faith in the good Lord, and I, I'm a big believer in the philosophy of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I believe I'm at that self-actualization. I can remember reading about it and studying it, and I believe that's where I am. And I see my position at this point in my life is in terms of politics, to be that mentor and to pass that baton to the next generation, because the tactics, the approaches that were used during the 60s and 70s in my generation have come and gone. And one of the things that I never realized that was such an asset to me currently as a member of the legislature, two things. My difficult journey from innocence to a real stark reality, and working back to working with people and understanding that you look at each person individually, and all my social work, interpersonal. That was my focus when I got my master's, was interpersonal skills. I am not the smartest person over there, but what I am good at, and I'll say it, are my interpersonal skills. If you have some likability, if you're willing to listen to others, if you're willing to share, and most of all, to be honest with each other, forgiving of each other, because over there, it's not personal, it's business. And this is not fluff ball. This is hardcore blood sport. And so there's a balance. But you always have to remember people. It's people that you're working with and people that you're fighting for. You never get anything done standing on the outside like I was as a Black Panther. That only comes when two people sit down together, respect each other, keep each other's dignity intact. Whether you're right wing or left wing, as they call me at times, this is another human being with ideas. And if you're willing to sit down and listen, you can learn some things and then build on that. Because I truly believe that this journey into the 21st century is going to require that we coexist. And you can't do that unless you're able to interact. And that's why I said I think I've made the full circle.
But you've got 8 more years, right?
I have 6 more years. 6 more years.
Oh, so they count the 2 in the House toward the 12.
Oh yeah. So I plan to run for re-election this year. Hopefully we'll win. I'm going to outwork all of my opponents if I have any, because the one thing that I have discovered is that people want to run, but they're lazy. You got to work. I cannot assume that just because I was on the school board, I've been on almost every board that I've served in the House and the Senate, that this time around that I'm just going to throw my name out there and say, vote for me. No, you have to go back. You have to let people know that I need you. Tell me if I've done a good job, then I'm asking for you to send me back. If I haven't, tell me. And maybe I can correct that if you feel strong, if you don't feel it's so strong that you can't ever vote for me. And if you don't vote for me, vote. That's the thing I want you to do, because the one thing about it, it's not arrogance. I am going to outwork anybody. Because I'm going to be out there with the people. Because people want to know. They haven't elected you, and you've gone off and ridden in the sunset, and you don't come back until election time. I'm a purist on that. I believe we are there. The position doesn't belong to me. I am only occupying this to the next person that the baton is passed to. But while I am there, I have a responsibility to keep the promises that I made when I was running. And I don't have, quote, a special project. I think my predecessors certainly had one. And in politics, the reality is that you use a whole bunch of political favors and capital on getting that special project. Now, there are monies that were set up that you don't have to fight to try to keep. But my focus is a lot different than those who came before me, in that when I ran, I said that I represent all people. So there are Native Americans in my district that I represent that I have to attend to their needs. There are Hispanics in my district. They're poor whites. They're whites. They're African Americans. And if I don't have the likability, I can't help anybody. And I have to understand what those issues are, not by reading the newspaper, but by being there with those groups. And it sometimes gets difficult because when you're learning about different ethnic groups, I'll give you an example. The Hispanic, I was meeting with a group, and another group was, saying, no, their focus is different, and so you have to walk a tightrope to try to understand all, and then hopefully try to incorporate those issues and bring about some commonality on those issues that are important. But for me, it is important, as I told them in orientation when we were asked, what do you want to accomplish? I mean, what role do you plan to play? And I said, be your conscience. When we stand up here and we spout these pretty words, and when we stand on the campaign corners and shaking hands in the barber shops and beauty shops, and we promise to take care of the children, the senior citizens, to fund those entities that provide for a better quality of life, I truly believe that's what we're there for. Now, that makes me a little odd because it appears that you're being a Pollyanna. No, we made these promises. And I've won all of the battles, but I'm going to be consistently saying, but we promised the people that we were going to improve health care and move away from being 47th in the nation. We promised people education was going to improve and no longer be at the bottom. And yet the reality is that in the end, in particular election years, very little gets done because each side is trying to preserve the leadership. Because see, I get to voice myself on the floor and in caucus and individually to persons. But to sit across the table, I don't get a chance to do that. Not personal, not racial. It is the politics of things. If you represent people of influence, you got a better chance. If you are able to raise $500,000 for the party, you got a better chance. If leadership made the mistake of supporting your opponent and you win and you threaten to change parties, you're going to get what you want. So it's a struggle to be heard. But all of life's learning and experiences for me makes it real easy for me to stand and continue to yell and scream, not at the top of my voice, but to remind them that you have to be a lot more inclusive in this deal. And if we're talking about, if you just want to be strictly politics, then if you Democrats, you adhere to the Democrat policies, principles. Because if you're gonna vote with the other party, then the people will select the true party person as opposed to the light. If you get what I mean, I don't want to call party names. So it's everything that has happened in my life has brought me to this point, and it's the most wonderful point in my life. I have inner peace. I have a real sense of focus about what I'm going to do without fear if I get reelection. If I don't get reelection or elected, then it wasn't meant to be. You know, I look at it like ecclesiastic. If it's your season, I'll get there. If not, then hey, it was a wonderful trip and journey there. And and I constantly remind my colleagues, don't get so full of yourself, because guess what? You're just going to be another picture on that wall. And when visitors come to the Capitol, most of the time they not even know your name. And then if they do see the name, they don't know what you've done. So, as the movie said, it's a wonderful life and it's a wonderful time for me to be alive, because, I have no fear of fighting for the collective good of the people of Oklahoma.
Well, let's go back a little bit. And why specifically did you switch from the House to the Senate? Was there the 4-year versus 2-year or some other?
Oh, yeah. Now, if we go back, remember the young man who wanted to run for the House. So I was taking a real chance of giving up a safe seat to do this. But I wanted it for him because he had proven himself to me. And I kept my word. And if I hadn't won, then, hey, it was a good 2 years. That was all I was supposed to do. But on a practical sense, yes. Every 2 years, you're doing nothing but everything you do is politically oriented. And within 4 years, it gives me a long time to be, and get not only me, but the other persons with the 4-year, other senators. You got a longer time, so what you do is, to me, more pure, if you choose to go that route. Now, not everybody does. So that when I'm attending something or working with somebody, I'm not doing it to get elected in 6 months, maybe 3 years. But the way I look at it is, if the longer you stay in, the more people you're going to lose. But you hope that on the other end that you are gaining. But just on a practical level, it is sure better to run every 4 years as opposed to 2. I don't think I would have served my whole 12 years running every 2 years. That would have not been for me.
On swearing-in day, was your mother there?
Oh, God, yes. Oh, she was so proud, and she's still so proud. She is still so proud. She is now 83, and she goes to everything that I can invite a guest. My mother is there. In fact, we just came back from the statehood ceremonies, and she had a ball. But it's refreshing to see her face because she was emotionally upset, like I was, and in any mother who watches their child upset, as she said, about a situation that didn't have to happen, but did. It just fits. I mean, if she doesn't live another day, it's like, this belonged to you anyway. You did all the work anyway. You have mother's heart. So he's gotten very little credit for anything. And for years, I couldn't call his name around her. No.
Well, do you live there during session, or do you commute back and forth?
Oh, gosh, no. Now, listen, you've got to be real good to commute back and forth. I stay there. I go on Sunday after church, and I stay till Thursday. The last couple of weeks of the session, we work on Fridays, so you just plan to stay, all that week. Again, I don't have any children, but I do have a dog that I found in the street about 9 years ago. He's a little terrier, mixed breed, don't know what the other part is. And I named him Harry, give him hell Truman. He was a slick-haired dog when I found him, and then his hair started growing. And he was like Harry, and I thought, Harry Truman, political, I'm thinking. Harry Truman was president, so I'm going to give him some pedigree, since I found him in the street. And he's also known as Mr. President. and he stays. He's been going to Oklahoma City with me since I won the House.
Hey.
Oh yeah, he stays in the hotel motel actually. It's a motel on Lincoln, and they're pet friendly. And when we have the tornado alerts, they go and get Mr. President and bring him to the office. I could not make it without him being there. It's just such a companion. And as a female legislator, it's risky, I'll put it like that, risky to go from, how can I say this, place to place in the evenings. And, men like to go to sport bars, I'll just put it like that. And so, you have to be very careful. You have to be very careful. And that's a disadvantage because a lot of business, a lot of deals are cut. But then I'm not sure I want to be out till 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning.
What is the women group together and do something?
Oh, yeah. Some of the female lobbyists will have, each year they have where you can get a massage and do your nails and, just women stuff. And then some of the lobbyists take only the women out. We do have the Republican and Democrat women meet. And we bring issues jointly because despite the party differences, all women there understand the boys club. And there is one. You just have to work it. But you do have, I see no party lines when we're talking about other women in the House or the Senate.
Well, since you had some experience in the 70s, is it still the same boy club, or can you tell if it's changed?
Oh, it's still the same boys club. Oh, sure. It's just very subtle. It's very subtle. And there's a balance of, it still exists. If you're too aggressive, you're not going to see outward reaction. But you feel it when you don't get your money, you don't get the committee. They're silent ways, and who, me? But the good thing about it is I don't know one woman over there who is not assertive. And while there's only one Republican woman in the Senate, I think there are 4 or 5 women Democrats in the Senate. And then I think you have about 11 maybe women in the House. Most of them are Republicans. Oh.
No, we're good. I just need to switch to PayPal. Go ahead.
Oh.
This one's working. Let's switch.
Oh, okay. And all of them, certainly have different personalities and stuff. But all of them are very assertive. And we work it when we need to. We women over the centuries have learned to do that.
It's safe to ask how you work it?
Different ways. One way, someone may have a closer relationship with, say, the chair of a specific committee. And so you'll have that person to talk with that person to see, please let this bill be heard. You can't guarantee that it'll pass out of there. Then you have to use your friends to work the other committee members to, that's one example.
So do you all get together after hours then as a group?
Not most of the time. Well, you see them because there's always something going on, a reception. And so, we'll see each other then. But I think, it's probably unfair to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think women are a lot more serious. I know I read everything. I will go to the 5:30 reception, but I'm going to come home and I'm going to read every bill. Do I understand them all? No, but I make notes. And I think women tend to read their material and do a lot more homework. And I think they spend that time there as opposed to, gallivanting around. Can't say too much, I may be.
Well, so if you're staying on Lincoln, then you come down Lincoln Boulevard
Yeah,
to the
right down
Capitol,
there.
and what are your thoughts when you see
Oh,
the dome?
oh, you know what? I still, and I know people hear that and they just don't believe it, but every time I get ready to walk in there and I see the dome, it's just like, I can't believe I'm one of 48 people. I can't believe this is where I work. I can't believe I have this opportunity of a lifetime that a lot of people don't ever get. I am still awed by being there. And I look at that Capitol and think, my thoughts are there. The people that I represent, thoughts are there. I have an opportunity to do what my dad said do, is to work on the inside and realistically know that I'm not going to change the world, but I may make a difference. I may make a dent in something, and it's just awesome to be there. I mean, I love it. I love every day of it. I don't like the bickering. I hate the bickering. I think it has been so destructive. And with this being an election year, it's not going to be any better. I have concerns, even though I'm a recipient of the term limits. I have a concern about that because staff will probably be the persons in control, because it takes a little while to even learn your way to the bathroom, and so you don't have time. There's an advantage and disadvantage of building up some real expertise. And so you're going to have this constant turnover. The lobbyists will be working harder because you got to keep educating. And as soon as you educate, it's time for others to leave. Now, I know that they were probably looking at, when I say they, it's going to be the invisible they that wanted term limits. I don't know who they are. But I don't know if it'll be revisited. But I think they need to look at it, because if it's somebody you want to get rid of, I mean, that district has to do that. But to lose the history, the expertise, I'm telling you, the people of Oklahoma's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are in trouble. And that's not to say they're bad people. They're inexperienced, like me, initially. It's taken me 6 years, truly, to feel as comfortable as I feel, to understand the lay of the land, the political realities, what needs to be done, how it needs to be done. And I'll be gone. If I'm lucky enough to win this next term, I probably will not run the last 2 years. Why? Because I truly believe that this district deserves somebody who at least has 2 years, and if they can't defend themselves for the next 10 years, that's on them. And so I will not run the last 2 years and pass that baton on to someone who want to work for it.
But you could run in the house one more time then.
Oh yeah, I could run in the house, but I'm going to tell you what, I'm not. Well, that's true, and that's what people said. Oh, stop saying that, but that's how I feel now. I'm just looking at the larger picture, and I know what it's like. And you won't even bring a crust of bacon, a bit of bacon home when you're so new. And if the Senate becomes Republican and both houses are Republican, Democrats going to be basically just drawing a paycheck. In the House, because it is so divided politically, there's a 15 or a 17 vote difference. And the Republicans can do anything they want to do. Anything, and they do. It doesn't make them bad, but that's the politics of things. So what is getting done? Now, if you have it on both sides, right now we have to share. So they're co-chairs for everything. I co-chair with Senator Wilcox, I'm the only female in the Republican Senate on education. And so nothing can be done unless we both agree on it at this point. If we lose, then I will totally have to depend on likability of the majority to work with. I don't fear that. I don't want it. I don't fear it because I know what I can get passed and what I can't. And if I don't have my name on it, it doesn't matter, just so we get it passed. It's kind of like what the Republicans are doing now, the leadership. Jeannie McDaniels, female from Tulsa, on Habitat for Humanity. It was a tax break or something. I can't really remember what it was. Make a long story short. The Speaker Cargill said that the bill would only be heard with the Republican's name on it. But Jeannie was big enough because she wanted it to relinquish and allow a Republican to put their name on there. And they passed the bills. And election time, guess who gets the credit? So you've got a bitter fight of trying to reclaim some things. And that's why I say it's this year, I really hope we can get something done. The people, I mean, we're just sinking further and further. But anyway, that's the bleeding heart in me.
Now, what would be your first 2 or 3 items that you would like to get done?
Okay.
This year?
Now, this is real personal because it didn't get passed last year. It didn't get out of the House committee. I'm a breast cancer survivor. I met with the executive directors of Tulsa Project Women, Why Me, the Susan Coleman, and some other resource people. And I filed a shell bill that only said breast cancer. And we got together and with the staff, a telephone, and they decided what direction we wanted to go. That direction was lymphedema, to try to get $600,000 to the healthcare authority, which would be then matched with federal dollars to 1.9 for treatment. And the sleeves that you have to wear, I understand it's real painful. I don't have to have. I do have those sleeves. I must have them on and keep them on 2 hours after I reach my destination when I fly. Because when lymph nodes have been disrupted, like they had to take out a couple of, no, they didn't take out one. They did, the ones that were closest to the, where the cancer was. And so the flow gets interrupted and it's painful, I understand. But insurance and stuff don't like to pay for that. So, but anyway, make a long story short, it passed in the Senate and died in the House. Partly my fault because I did not work the Republican House like I should have. I talked with them a couple of times and thinking that was going to be enough and thinking that the House out there would do. But this time around, that's going to be my first project to answer your question. I want to also be on board with those bills that deal with putting money into mandates that we already have mandated and that these social agencies cannot fulfill and provide services to. They can do that if you can give Chesapeake over a $400 million tax cut, and Chesapeake and oil certainly important to this state, but there needs to be a balance on some things. You cannot mandate for schools, health, and all of that, and you give no money. And then there's a law that the people have passed that says we can't raise taxes unless basically all of us agree to it. And hello, that will never happen. So I want to look at ensuring that mandates get some money. I want to look at that monies go for providing preventive care, child abuse preventive care to parents and children, health care. We're 40 something with health care. We're at the bottom of the barrel. How can we, the next 100 years, provide any kind of real future for us when people are sick and can't get help and they have to make decisions about, particularly like, I'll just say breast cancer women who will get help for their child before they get help for them, and then they die needlessly. I don't have any major bills other than the cancer bill. I'm going to co-author a lot of bills that relate to the issues that I just talked about. I think the last of December is the deadline for the bills that we're going to file, and so there will be people coming to me to ask me to file bills on certain things. I have learned the hard way that you only accept authorship on a bill that you can discuss. I killed a lot of bills because I didn't know the subject matter. I'm like, what? Oh, you didn't tell me. So I hope that the focus will be on improving the quality of life. Those issues that will improve the quality of life, because everybody's hurting except for the well-to-do. I mean, middle-class Oklahomans are hurting. I mean, look, we've expanded the OOHRP to $50,000. Now, that says a whole lot in terms of income. And if, again, we're serious about Oklahoma being a viable place and for people to come, for young people to stay and to build this state and to provide the leadership from us, we got to do those things. I'm going to remain hopeful, but I'm not sure, because on an election year, it is a scrappy fight. Leadership will be pointing fingers at each other's party. The whole focus will be to bring up issues that either put somebody on notice publicly that they've supported either a good or bad bill. It's all going to be about manipulating the issues to try to highlight somebody that's made a mistake. But in the middle of all of that chaos, I'm going to keep fighting for the things that I believe in. We're going to start with breast cancer first, because it's unfinished business. And I told them we're going to finish that business this year. And I think Senator Tom Adelson, and I think it did pass, provided a bill that would allow for more children to get health care. We have too many children here who can't get health care. And you and I take it for granted. Your kid gets sick, take them to the doctor. So many people can't do that. So, but I'll tell you what, if the legislature follows its usual path, substantive, be very little. They'll bring up, though, there are going to be lots of issues like immigration and abortion and tort reform that are gotcha bills that bring out the base, one base or another, to ensure that you continue in leadership or that you stay out. And that's the political reality. But I love it. And I'm hopeful.
And it takes you a while to learn that sort of thing.
It takes a long time to learn, and that's why I go back to the term limits. And I do benefit from that. I did. But look how much time it took me. My first year, I was so intimidated, and I never had a problem talking. My first bill was a know-nothing bill. It added one more member to the Governor's Commission on the Status of Women. When I stood up to talk about that bill, I looked around and I saw people in the gallery, and behind me were the press, and then you saw all of these legislators who I just assumed were so much smarter than a social worker. bad assumption. I couldn't even get one word out. I was terrified. And because I had seen how they do others.
What got you over the?
Well, Jerry Askins came over, a woman, came over and literally held my hand and told me it was going to be okay. And other people were trying, and they were trying to be helpful. Oh, do that, blah, blah, blah. You know, just so many voices at one time. And so she said, you know, basically asked them, just, you know, we've got her. She's okay. And I was able to babble out. And people always want to have fun at your expense, so they ask questions and stuff. So I had to, you know, I just couldn't get away with just one thing. Because they like and it's not personal. They have fun at your expense.
This is the first time you have something
exactly.
to say.
And then they all vote no for it, but actually then they end up voting yes for it. But you don't know that. You're initiated. But that was the beginning of turning myself around. And I'll tell you what, after committee meetings, after listening to other people get up and talk about issues and stuff, I realized they may be a banker, they may be an attorney, they may be an oilman, but they don't know too much more than I do when it comes to people and resources in this community. I know a lot about social services, 31 years worth, and I know rural versus urban. You know, they know where they live, but they have no idea about the bigger picture and the reality of a lot of people's lives. I also knew more than I thought I knew about education. And so I thought, oh, I don't think so. I'm gonna look at this like I looked at OU. I'm gonna get on the honor roll. I'm gonna learn my way around here. These people didn't send me over here, you know, to succumb to my own personal fears. And it certainly was different being a wife, you know, from being a wife. But it wasn't, as I looked back, I thought, this is not new. This is really not new. What's new is having some self-confidence and understanding that you work on those issues that you know something about. You don't get up there and me talking about oil and tax and gas tax and the percentage. You know, somebody had me doing, I'm like, what? They started asking questions. I said, can't even spell it. You know? So it was a combination. It did not occur, that turnover of confidence didn't occur immediately. I had some bad votes because I didn't ask questions. I lost some votes. I lost some issues because I didn't lobby. I just assumed, okay, this is Judy's bill and they'll go for it. You have to sell it. And I didn't do that. The mistake I made with the breast cancer and now you never not get away from those things. If you believe in it, you got to sell it. And you find out that these people have some of the same problems you got. Their districts have the same, and that's what I remind them. You may have an affluent district, but somebody gets sick. You got help who works in these houses and stuff that you consider as family, and they get sick. You want to help them. You want to be, you know. So it's not that you don't understand. You understand better than you think you understand. And when you add likability, and part of getting that is, for me, being pleasant. I'm a hugger. So these people were stiff initially, you know, and I'd hug them, and it was like hugging a board. And I'm like, oh, no, you're going to hug me. I have to have this. For me, you're going to. And now I have Republican, Democrats, workers, you know. Everybody, if they don't get their hug, they come to me and say, I didn't get my hug this morning. So if I haven't done anything, I've kind of lowered the tension in terms of people feeling it's okay to be human with each other. You know, we're all really in the same boat. We all really have the same kind of problem. You may have more financial resources than I have, or the people that I represent. But a class that I took in graduate school was Common Human Needs. And we all got that. And if we can just take away some of the real politics of this and work for those common needs, we can get there. And it's how you see it. I couldn't get that likability by being a Black Panther. I couldn't do it. Couldn't get that likability now by being anti-everything. You have to be a team player sometime. And I try to be a team player. Now those things that I don't believe in, I'm not going to do it. I don't care if the leader asks me to do it. I'm not going to do it. I would never have an abortion, but I've always supported the woman's right to do that. And so if the caucus is going to go one way, I'm sorry, I'm not going that way. I believe the way I believe. Now you just have to punish me on something else. Or maybe I can support you on something else. But as I told them, we have more common grounds than we don't. And even, as I like to say, my good Republican friends, Brian Crane, Senator Crane from Tulsa, is my best Republican friend, I'll put it like that. And where we're honest with each other, he helped me to condense my discussions on my issues. Because he said I left myself open for a lot of people to ask a lot of questions. Say what you got to do and be quiet. If you notice through this thing, have I stopped talking? No. This is detrimental on the floor. But he said, Judy, say what you have to say. Be prepared to answer questions. And you won't get so... See, that I would anticipate the questions and be so scared that I knew the answer, but I'd be like, and if you're not sure, if they see blood, hey, you go after it. So have that kind of relationship. And like with Lucky Lyman, Representative Lucky Lyman, a Democrat from the House, of ex-policeman, I'm not soft on crime. And they discovered that. They just assumed because I believe in a woman's right to abortion, they painted a brush that said I was a flaming liberal. No, I'm not going to coddle criminals. And I've had Lucky to tell me a couple of times. He said, Judy, this bill is something that would make you a champion in your district, although it's not really a good bill. If you go strictly political, those are where you have to decide. Do I want some substance or do I not? Am I trying to just do this because I want to get reelected? This is just not me. I'm just not going to do it. I have no tolerance for rapists. I have no tolerance for people who are violent to women, children, to senior citizens. None. I'm real hardcore. If it was left up to me, I wouldn't give the Department of Corrections not one dime. My first year over there, and I got myself in trouble because I was the only one out of the 101 to vote no. Corrections does not get any money. When we spend in, what is it about? Is it about $6,000 per student in Tulsa? In the state for education? And we spending almost $40,000 per inmate. Well, I'm going to tell you what. It's a personal thing. May get me elected or may get me defeated. But the bottom line is, if I want to have a choice and I have a vote, I'm going to vote to incarcerate. I just don't see spending that money. And what I do have a problem with are these hard sentences for everything. You sneeze, it's a felony. Fine. But where's this money going to come from? On whose back? Particularly when you're giving away hundreds of millions of tax breaks to big companies, and we can't replenish that money. And so what we have is just a spot. We wouldn't do our own personal incomes like that, and yet that's what we do.
A lot to understand, isn't it?
It really is. And I think since we didn't have kids, and my ex-husband rather, always wanted me to be everywhere that we could be. So I was there. And so I did not realize, because I never thought I would need him myself, once he had to step down. I never dreamed I'd be here. But that's what I'm saying. Life's journey, you never know, and a lot of it I can look to and say was painful. But it also prepared me for the human being that I am today, that I haven't always been. And I want to leave this earth being even better.
I think there's going to be a problem.
I'm going to try.
Have I forgot to ask you anything?
Yeah, I don't know, because I've been talking so much.
You're doing good, though.
Oh, thank you.
First freshman appointed to the speaker's leadership team.
Yes,
What was that like?
Oh, God, that was at the same time when I told you I was so afraid. It was, I just couldn't believe it. We were there for orientation, and they called me out. Representative Danny Hillier, who was Speaker Pro Tem, said that Speaker Adair wanted me to come to his office. So like a school kid, I thought, what did I do wrong? And anyway, go in there, and he says he would like to have me on the leadership team. I said, the leadership team? I couldn't even hardly get. I said, but why me? I mean, I did nothing to enhance myself. I was doing everything to say, well, why wouldn't you get somebody else? And they said, well, you bring a lot to the table, which I never saw what they saw until later. And I had not gotten any of the chairmanships. I don't care how afraid I was. I went in asking, because I knew, being a chairman allows you to have control over the bills that come in and out and all of that. So I didn't get into that. So, but I got all the committees as a member, but not as a chair. And so I think, I can't say what was behind it. But I think also because a lot of them knew my ex-husband too. I won't, I'm not going to say that didn't happen. I don't know that was a major part, because by that time I'd established my own 16 years on the board and fighting for every cause and stuff. So I think there were a lot of reasons. I think also the Democrats were trying to show a broader base. Politics, okay, let's just say it. A bigger tent that included women. They got 2 for 1. One black, you know what I mean? And that next year, the Democrats lost the House. Not because of me, but, I think they were on a path, and I think they were, all of those things come into consideration. That's the unfortunate thing about it. Certainly, the sincerity of an issue is part of the decision making, but politics too. So the political aspect, I don't know why, but I enjoyed it. I initially just had to do more listening, because I didn't understand. Basically, I didn't know some of the people, because a lot of people had left from the 70s, so I didn't know them. And I didn't know history on the issue and what was the next step. And you want to also understand, where is it that we're trying to go? Why is it that we're doing this? And what are you hoping to achieve? Because there's always an agenda. And so I initially had to kind of listen. Then you also want to watch the linkages of people. Who's connected to whom? Because if I say something to you and you're part of the leadership, and I say, the leadership, the speaker just made me so mad because he didn't do this and that. Well, you don't know if they will go back and tell on you, and then you wonder, well, what happened to my bill? I thought it was going to be a side. Because believe me, there is control. But that never stopped me. Because I'm not going. I had to tell the Democratic caucus that I wasn't elected with 87% of the vote through the same process that you went through. And just because I don't represent rich folks or influential folks. People in my district, black, white, Hispanic, Native American, pay taxes like everybody else. And I'm going to fight for them. And if I'm not part of the leadership, it doesn't matter. Because I'm not going to stop saying what my people need, and I'm not going to just sit back and watch somebody else get it. So I had to tell them that. It was a little bit more forceful, I'll tell you, when we're not on tape.
I don't know that it'd take you much more for it.
Oh, you'd be surprised. But that was really a wonderful experience. But I'll tell you what happened. It was bittersweet. People, legislators, House members rather, who had been there a long time, or longer than me, had done a lot of things with the team, with the speaker, to try to get into leadership. When they asked me, there was a lot of them mad at me, my own Democrats. So I had to work to try to get that kind of tension. That's where the social work, interpersonal skills came in. So what I told the leadership is, particularly freshmen, because here I'm one of 13, Baker's dozen as they called us, why not meet with them once a month so that they too will know what I know as a freshman. The other ones who had worked and tried to get in, wasn't much I could do about that. That was the speaker. He'd have to resolve that. I would just have to try to work with them, even though I knew they were mad, some of them. But that never bothered me because, again, when you are calling somebody a bad parent or you are taking a kid away from a parent, they're not loving you. And so you learn to shut those emotions off. And my focus was, I understand they worked hard to try to get, I didn't do anything to get this, there was politics. But you and I are going to work together. And I'm not going to let you just continue to be mad at me for no reason. And some people are easier to break like a horse, and some take a little bit longer. But I worked them all. Because it's not personal. It wasn't personal for me. But one of the greatest things that did happen was with my fellow freshmen when the speaker did take my advice and we met in there. Because even they were chairman of some powerful committees, but still, leadership is where they decide what's going to happen and who's going to be a part of it, And the decisions are not always, it could just be strictly friendship and political. Strictly.
Well, the 13.
Baker's dozen.
How many were women? Do you remember?
2.
2. Not many then.
2. And one had served before, Rebecca Hamilton.
Okay.
She had served and got married, I think, to a fellow legislator and had a family and stopped. And she came back. So there were only 2 of us. And I was the only African American.
Where was your office in the Capitol? Where is it still?
Oh, now in the House, I shared with Rebecca Hamilton. They put us together. Now, because I was on leadership, I wasn't about to get a great office. I would have been thrown out by my peers. Oh no, you don't get a good office. Oh no. So we shared a room that probably wasn't too much larger than this. But you know what? I didn't care. I was there, and I knew I wasn't going to be there for 2 years anyway, so it didn't matter. But you would have to meet outside in the hall if too many people came in, or go to the lounge because you just didn't have any room. But there were only 2 of us.
And then in the Senate?
2. Wait a minute, let me see. Yeah, Susan Paddock, Senator Paddock from Ada, and me. Debbie Leftwich was already there. Mary Easley was already there. Just 2 of us. And we're getting smaller numbers.
And we're 19 currently between the 2.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait a minute. One other. I'm sorry. Connie Johnson. She took Angela, and I almost say Angela Davis, Angela Munson's place, because Angela served her 2 years and Connie came in on those 2 years. But Connie was not part of my class, my freshman class in the Senate.
Well, in the early 70s, when your husband was in, Hannah Atkins was in it.
Yes, yes. There was a black organization, in a segregated society. There were not many things that we missed, that we didn't have. It was just contained. And there were what they call the Jack and Jills. And I did not realize it till much later. You had to have both parents in order to get in. It was like a sorority. Oh, yeah. But anyway, so Hannah's kids and I were in Jack and Jill together. When I was at OU, the only thing that you could join was a black sorority. And there was only one sister, a soror on campus. So I met with OSU. So there was a group. So I would go to OSU and Langston for sorority meetings. But Hannah was a soror, Alpha Kappa Alpha, and Hannah it was in the graduate chapter that took me over. So I've known Hannah forever. See, remember the 70s? And that's when the legislature was getting more and more African Americans. So I happened to live through that wonderful period too.
Anything particular you want to say about it?
No, it was. The irony of it is that there was such a internal fight between the Oklahoma City legislators. I mean, it was just horrible. They just almost destroyed each other. You don't have a hand fingerful, but that's the thing that I do remember about that.
Well, which do you think's the biggest hurdle, being your race, gender, age, political party, or any just character maybe?
You know what? I was asked that same question when I was on the school board, and it was the gender. It's the gender. People want to, it's very subtle. When I was on the school board and divorced, I was told, and I wish I had kept a couple of emails, that that I needed to get a man in my life because I had too much time on my hands. Because I was always, went from being a board member to be of the board. Because yes, I was always asking questions and challenging. There is a talk of inclusiveness with women. But it's when there are layers of the deal. But when it gets to the end, I don't care. Senator Paddock is in leadership. She has complaints.
Interesting. I would think that we've come some distance from the 60s until now.
We have. It's just not as overt. And you've got a higher ceiling. Or a longer rope, however you want to say it. But it just reminds me of that book, but men are from Mars and women are from Venus. You have to watch not being emotional. Because the minute you get emotional, it's lost. It's lost. And that hasn't changed from Susan B. Anthony's time. There's a fine line between being aggressive, assertive, and the B word, not ever say it. And so what they do is you just get shut out. And you know that. But you always have to be aware of every interaction that you have, at least I do, so that you can not get to the level rather where you're getting ready to be pushed out. Because you can see it coming. I mean, you just know. I haven't had any trouble racially. I've had from people, constituents in Oklahoma, not necessarily in my district. I was out front on the Indian mascot bill that I think all of my all leadership knew what going anywhere, and I knew they did not want me to bring it out, but I'm barreling straight ahead, and I got lots of emails about that, calling you all kind of names and stuff. But I'll tell you what, again, DHS prepared me for that when you got parents and relatives and stuff, so it's not personal. And I'm still getting. I just got an email the other day calling me a traitor and the B word regarding my vote against the immigration bill, 1804. So, but that's not gender, that's not race. I've never been called the N-word in any of the hostile emails, and I wouldn't know who they were. I guess there's a way of checking, but I don't know. No, it centers around gender. And of course, none of the people. And I think, again, the conscience, because I am pretty upfront about issues. I share things, part of the Black culture that we could laugh about and not be so uptight about, because I discovered that near the end of my stay in undergraduate school at OU, that the more we talked, a lot of the barriers came down, because I understood them, that they had grown up, they had never seen Black people before. They didn't know. And I didn't know people just disliked you just because they saw that you were Black. But we talked. And I think that's what, again, you carry those skills into that. And so I don't walk around, like, don't even say the word Black, or, I don't, we're human beings, we coexist. We follow the golden rule. I'm going to do unto you as I would have you do unto me, and vice versa. And then you don't have to deal with the race, you deal with the coexistence of another human being on this earth.
Well, besides some of the other things you said earlier, for what kind of other advice would you give women that were thinking about going into?
Do it, first of all. Women make better legislators, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
The things that the people want, whether it's education, health, or whatever, we're more nurturing. And women are better organized. They've had to be wife, mother, everything, and can see, are more likely to be inclusive in their thinking and decision making. They're not afraid to go to have the soft issues where let's help this without being seen as a flaming liberal. Now, of course, you have the conservative element of that. But women, if you think that you want to do it, then you do it. Now, you can't just say, I'm going to do it one day and the next day. There is a path. If you're whatever party you're in, you're going to have to be known there. As they like to say, it's whether male or female, there are dues to be paid. Now, with the term limits, there's a shorter span because now people are going out to seek people. If you go that route, you let people know within the existing party that I'm interested in running. And hopefully you will have some kind of record within the community that lets people have some insight on your performance, what they can anticipate in your performance. Are you willing to take on the tougher issues, or are you the one who will sit silent? What are the kinds of things have you fought for? And most of all, what is your passion? And that passion has to be out front. And when people see the passion, they may not agree with my passion, but they agree that she's got a passion. And so we have to listen. So women, Oklahoma is not going to get any better until more women get in there. I truly believe that. I'm hoping that we will soon have a woman governor when Governor Henry is no longer here. I'm hoping that Lieutenant Governor Askins will run for governor and we'll have our first woman. And I think that will be a beginning of women again believing like we did in the 60s and 70s that because I was in the NOW movement, there's not a movement I haven't been in. And I think there will be a resurgence of women saying, I can do it. And in particular, these young women who are so bright, who have so many experiences that, that I didn't get, not because of segregation and all that, but because a lot of those things were not here, too, that they will get that, be bitten by that bug and stay here. We're losing too many. We're losing too many of them. But there's no reason to have a handful of women in the legislature. If the needs of the people are truly going to be met, women who are much more sensitive and in tune to what needs to be done. They also can be tough enough to play the game that you have to play. You can't be soft. You've got to have an armor of protection on yourself because you can't look at it like it's personal, even though it may be. And you can't hold a grudge because in politics, you have to remember that the only permanent things it's not friends, it's interest. And if the interests are the same, it doesn't matter a lot of times about gender. If your interests are different, gender, race, everything else may come into it. So you have to have more than a desire. You have to have thick skin. But at the same time, you have to keep your womanness, your femininity. And there are different ways of expressing that. And you have to have good interpersonal skills. You've got to understand the process. And the key to it, and I haven't conquered this yet, the key to it is understand the rules of the game. Because it doesn't matter if you're male or female. If you understand the rules, you can make things happen parliamentarily.
Navigate the road.
You can navigate the road. Now, of course, you got to garner people's support there. And if you can get that, male or female, you're in the driver's seat. So to answer your question, I went all around the block. Women, if you're interested, do it. But be prepared, like a Boy Scout said, be prepared. It is not a bed of roses. And I've been fortunate in that, fortunate or unfortunate, however you look at it, because I couldn't have children. Although I think I'm the mother of Oklahoma. I have so many kids, Black, white, Native American. I will never be alone. I planned it that way. I think you have to also make sure if you are married or have a significant other that they have to have a true understanding that this will take away a great deal of your time. Women with small children, I'm sure you could do it. There's always a cost. Your partner has to be there with you. Has to be. Otherwise, it's going to make it much more difficult. And when you're trying to get people's business done, and you have a personal fight going on within your family, you can't serve two masters. And we lose a good woman. So make sure that the man that you choose has a strong enough back, has enough self-confidence and passion and love for you to, I don't like the word allow you, to stand with you, as the wedding vow said, in good times and in bad.
Well, if you don't have anything else, I have one last question.
Okay.
Unless there's something you want to talk to about before we get there?
I don't know. I've talked so much.
You're doing great. I usually end this with asking you to say when history is written about you. What would you like for it to say?
When history is written about me, I want it to say that I want to be called a woman warrior who fought not street fights, but fought within the boundaries of the rules, who did her homework, who was not afraid to take a stand, who was consistent in her passion for children, for senior citizens, who was consistent for health care and education, and who was one of Oklahoma's greatest huggers in the legislature.
I'll have to get one of those before you.
You will! And who most of all enjoyed every day, every moment of this job that the people entrusted to me. Because I realized that it's fleeting. It comes and it goes. But I want to be that woman warrior who made a difference. Maybe not with the biggest bill, but in terms of getting people to work together for the common good. That my interpersonal skills allow that people to sit down to hear each other as opposed to screaming with each other. So a woman warrior got results. Got some results, not all the results, because there's always the next generation of women to follow.
Well, I think that the people of Oklahoma have been blessed to have you.
Oh, thank you.
And
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure hearing your story today.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I talked so long. Where was my voice when I needed it the first time, my first bill?